You wake up in the morning, and before the sun even touches your face, you're already carrying the weight of yesterday. Pain, struggle, confusion, it's real, but listen, you don't broadcast it. You don't hand your problems over like free samples at a supermarket. This world doesn't run on sympathy. It runs on strength, on silence, on strategy. People say, talk to someone, it helps. Sure, maybe once, maybe twice, but don't make it a habit. Because the truth is, most people don't care. And the ones who pretend to, they'll listen just enough to know your weakness, then they'll use it, flip it, weaponize it. You think you're venting? No, you're feeding snakes. Let me tell you something, the more you talk, the more power you give away. You become easy to read, predictable, and predictable people are easy to control. Stop giving people the script to your chaos. Keep it inside, let it cook, let it burn, then use it. Build something from it. You don't need an audience, you need a plan. Pain is fuel, but only if you keep it locked in. Turn it into focus, into discipline, into cold, sharp silence. And let them wonder not about your problems, but how you never fold. When we talk about not broadcasting your struggles, what we're really talking about is power. Your own personal power, the kind that's built in silence, shaped in solitude, and strengthened through restraint. There is an illusion, often fed by the world around us, that sharing everything we feel, everything we experience, and everything we suffer through somehow makes us lighter. But what it often does instead is strip us of the very core strength that could have been forged in silence. When you speak too soon, when you share too much, you invite opinions, interference, judgment, and sometimes even manipulation. The more people know about your weaknesses, your setbacks, your vulnerabilities, the easier it becomes for them to label you, box you in, or even use your pain to their advantage. People begin to associate you with your problems rather than your potential. They stop seeing what you could be, and instead, they start viewing you through the filter of your complaints. That's not empowerment, that's exposure. There is nothing wrong with needing help. Let's be clear about that. But there's a difference between needing support and turning your pain into your personality. There's a difference between seeking a solution and constantly repeating your problems like a broken record. One keeps you moving, the other keeps you stuck. And too many people today have mistaken venting for healing. Venting may feel good in the moment. It releases the pressure, gives you a temporary relief. But healing happens when you sit with your pain in silence, when you confront it without the noise, when you understand it on your own terms. Think about what happens when you broadcast your problems. You open yourself up to people's narratives, their filters, their interpretations. You may say one thing, but they hear another. You might be trying to express your frustration, but they hear weakness. You might be hoping for understanding, but they offer judgment instead. The more you speak, the more you dilute your own voice, until your problem becomes a community project. And once it's out there, you can't take it back. You've handed the weight of your struggle over to a world that may not know how to carry it, and worse, may not want to. People talk about transparency as if it's the highest form of authenticity. But transparency without boundaries is vulnerability without purpose. You don't have to hide your struggles to be strong, but you don't have to advertise them either. True strength lies in knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. It lies in choosing your audience wisely, in deciding who deserves access to your truth and who's only there for the drama. Because let's face it, some people aren't interested in helping you heal. They're interested in being entertained by your pain. Silence is not weakness, it's control, it's composure. It's knowing that just because you're going through hell doesn't mean you have to post about it. It's the understanding that your most painful battles can become your greatest weapons, but only if you protect them long enough to sharpen them in peace. Every time you keep a struggle to yourself, every time you resist the urge to overshare, you reinforce your inner fortress. You become more focused, more intentional, more grounded. You also stop giving people the chance to define your experience, because when you speak too soon about your problems, you often do it from a place of confusion, of raw emotion, of unprocessed pain. You say things you haven't fully thought through. You frame your story in a way that suits your current feelings, not the bigger picture. And by the time you gain clarity, the damage is done. People have already formed their opinions, shared their unsolicited advice, and made assumptions that may haunt you long after the moment has passed. Holding your problems close doesn't mean bottling them up. It means processing them wisely. It means filtering your emotions through your own mind and soul before letting them out into the world. It means asking yourself, what am I trying to achieve by sharing this? Am I seeking help, or am I just seeking attention? Am I looking for answers, or am I feeding my need to be seen in my suffering? Because suffering doesn't make you special. What you do with it does. The world respects composure. People may pretend to be drawn to drama, but deep down, they respect those who move with quiet confidence, who endure in silence, who fight their battles without putting them on display. Why? Because that kind of strength is rare. That kind of strength can't be faked. And that kind of strength unnerves people. It reminds them of their own lack of discipline, their own tendency to seek validation instead of growth. When you don't broadcast your struggles, you give yourself room to think clearly. You're not constantly rehearsing your pain for an audience. You're not editing your story to fit someone else's expectations. You're simply living it, learning from it, and letting it shape you. And in that space, away from the noise, away from the spotlight, you begin to transform. Quietly, consistently, powerfully, you also begin to see who's really there for you. The people who truly care about you don't need constant updates about your pain. They see it in your eyes, hear it in your silence, feel it in the way you move. They're the ones who offer support without needing the full story, who check in on you not because you made a post about it, but because they sense something was off. And those are the people who matter. The ones who respect your privacy, the ones who understand that strength doesn't always need a stage. By not telling everyone about your problems, you reclaim your narrative. You decide when and how it's told, if at all. You decide what parts of your journey are shared and what parts are sacred. And in doing so, you keep your dignity intact. You don't become the person who's always in crisis, always seeking pity, always caught in a cycle of emotional exhibition. You become someone people admire, not because you never struggle, but because you never crumble in public. Your problems are a part of you, but they don't define you. And when you choose not to tell everyone about them, you remind yourself of that truth. You refuse to let your worst moments become your identity. You give yourself the chance to rise in silence and speak from a place of strength, not desperation. That is power. That is maturity. That is wisdom earned through silence, not applause. When you stop telling people about your problems, you stop bleeding in front of those who aren't qualified to help you heal. You learn to hold your wounds until you find the right place, the right time, and the right hands to help you mend them. And sometimes you realize that you were always your own healer. You just needed to stop giving your power away to remember it. Most people don't care, and some will use it against you. This truth might sound harsh, even cold, but it's necessary. We live in a world where appearances matter more than authenticity, and where curiosity often wears the mask of concern. When you share your problems with people indiscriminately, hoping they'll understand, support you, or offer a solution, you are entering a space that is far more dangerous than it seems. Because the majority of people are not equipped, not willing, or simply not interested in genuinely helping. And of the few who do listen, some will not listen to help, they will listen to remember, to store, to analyze, and eventually to use. The hard reality is that people are more focused on themselves than anything else. Everyone is dealing with their own internal storms, their own hidden frustrations, their own unresolved problems. So when you start laying your issues out in front of them, they don't always receive it with compassion. Some listen just to compare. They measure your pain against theirs and decide whether you deserve sympathy or dismissal. Others listen to judge not with words necessarily, but with silence, with changed expressions, with the subtle shift in how they treat you going forward. And even those who seem to nod in agreement and say, "I understand," often don't, because they can't, or they won't try. Then there are those who pretend to care, the most dangerous kind. They show interest, ask questions, lean in closer, making you feel like you're finally being heard. You begin to trust them, you start sharing more, you expose more layers of yourself, and that's when they start building a file on you, quietly, silently. Your moments of pain become their mental ammunition. Your emotional confessions become points of leverage, maybe not right away, maybe not ever, but the potential is there, and it exists only because you gave them access. You handed them pieces of yourself that should have been protected. And now, whether you know it or not, they have power over you. Not everyone who listens is a friend. Not everyone who asks is concerned. Sometimes people are just curious. Sometimes they're bored. Sometimes they need something to gossip about. And if you think your personal pain isn't interesting enough to become conversation elsewhere, think again. People don't always repeat your words because they hate you. Sometimes they do it just to feel important, to feel like they know something others don't. You become a story, a character, a topic, not a human being in need of support. There is a subtle line between being open and being vulnerable to harm. When you open up to the wrong people, you allow your narrative to be twisted. Maybe they don't repeat your words word for word, but they reshape the spirit of what you said. They insert their interpretations, their biases, and their judgments. So what started as a cry for help turns into something completely different by the time it leaves their lips. And once your story has passed through several minds, you're no longer the author of your own experience. You've been rewritten. Some people will use your problems to elevate themselves. They'll posture as the strong one, the listener, the rescuer, while subtly reminding others that you were the one who broke down, the one who needed support, the one who couldn't handle it. They'll make you look weak, not directly, not obviously, but through suggestion, through contrast. They'll mention you in passing, share little details masked as concern, or use your struggle to bond with someone else. "Yeah, she told me she's been going through a lot. I just feel bad for her." Those kinds of comments aren't innocent. They're positioning statements. They are saying, "I am stable, she is not. I am strong, he is struggling." You might think you can trust people simply because they're close to you, family, friends, coworkers. But proximity does not equal loyalty. Just because someone has shared laughs with you, memories with you, or time with you doesn't mean they're safe with your truth. Some people stay in your life, not out of love, but out of habit, convenience, or shared circumstances. And those are the people who often feel entitled to your story without having earned the right to hold it. Even those who genuinely love you may not respond to your problems in the way you hope. Sometimes they'll offer advice that's more about making them feel helpful than about actually helping you. Sometimes they'll minimize what you're going through because they can't handle seeing you in pain. Sometimes they'll make it about themselves, turning your pain into a mirror for their own issues. And sometimes they'll simply grow distant, not out of malice, but out of discomfort. Not everyone knows how to handle the darkness that lives in others. And when they don't, they withdraw, leaving you exposed and often feeling worse than before. But the people who are the most damaging are the ones who smile with you in public and weaponize your pain in private. They'll remember your breakdowns, your regrets, your moments of weakness, and when the time comes, they'll use them, maybe in an argument, maybe to discredit you in front of others, maybe to justify their own betrayal. And when they do, you won't see it coming. You'll stand there wondering how someone who once listened so kindly could now be using your words like daggers. But the truth is, they were never listening to heal you. They were listening to study you. Sharing your problems too freely not only puts you at risk, it also drains your own ability to manage them. Every time you explain yourself to someone who doesn't truly care, you're watering down your pain, you're weakening your emotional clarity, you're spreading your energy thin by trying to be understood, accepted, or comforted by people who were never built to carry your weight. And over time, you start needing that external response. You start depending on it. You begin to crave the sympathy, the attention, the reassurance, even if it's coming from people who don't genuinely offer it. And that's how you lose yourself. You become a performer in your own suffering. You start tailoring your story based on who's listening. You exaggerate parts that get more reactions. You hide parts that might make you seem less likable. And soon, you're no longer processing your problems, you're performing them. You're not healing, you're rehearsing, repeating the same scripts, the same lines, hoping for applause, or at least validation. But healing doesn't happen in performance. It happens in private. There's also a cost to constantly telling people about your problems. You teach them how to treat you. If every time they see you, you're carrying a new story of struggle, you slowly stop being seen as capable. You stop being seen as someone who can lead, who can create, who can rise. You become the person who has a lot going on. The one people handle gently, avoid giving responsibility to, or worst of all, start to pity. And pity is not compassion. Pity is passive judgment wrapped in empathy. It's how people maintain distance while pretending to care. When you stop telling people about your problems, you take control of the narrative. You stop giving others the power to define your strength, your resilience, or your worth. You keep your process to yourself not because you're ashamed, but because you understand its value. You protect your journey. You guard it. Because not everyone deserves to walk through your inner world. Not everyone deserves to know what you're healing from. This doesn't mean you should never talk. It means you choose wisely. You share selectively. You identify the rare few who listen without judgment, who offer support without ego, who sit with your pain without trying to fix it for their own sake. And even then, you speak from a place of clarity, not desperation. You speak because it helps you grow, not because you want someone to carry your pain for you. It's natural to want connection, to want someone to say, "I get it. I've been there." But be careful, because once you've handed someone the map to your pain, you've also given them the coordinates to your soul. And if they're careless or worse, calculated, they'll come back not to help, but to take something from you. That's why you must be your own sanctuary, your own safe place. You must learn to sit with your struggle without rushing to explain it. You must learn to feel without broadcasting, to endure without needing an audience. Because in the end, most people won't care the way you hope. And the ones who pretend to, well, some of them are just waiting for a moment when your pain becomes useful to their agenda. Silence makes you unpredictable and powerful. In a world addicted to noise, constant updates, emotional transparency, and digital exposure, silence is not just rare, it's disarming. It unsettles people. It throws them off balance. Because when someone is silent, they can't be read easily. They can't be placed into a neat category. They can't be controlled. And that is where the power lies. Not in showing your every thought, but in choosing exactly what stays within you and what is allowed out. There is an illusion that to be understood, you must always express. But constant expression doesn't lead to clarity. It leads to vulnerability. It opens the gates to your mind and lets anyone wander in, take what they want, judge what they see, and leave. When people always know where you stand, what you feel, what you fear, and what you're struggling with, they hold a kind of map to you. And once someone has a map, they know how to navigate around you or through you. But silence erases that map. It clouds their vision. It introduces an unknown variable, and unknown variables are dangerous because they cannot be predicted or manipulated. Being silent doesn't mean being absent. It doesn't mean you're disconnected. It means you're present without being exposed. You're observant without needing to react. You're engaged without being emotionally stripped bare. And that level of restraint makes people uncomfortable. They can't figure you out. They start wondering what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you're hiding. And the moment someone starts wondering, they start watching, closely, carefully, with respect. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to bleed in front of others to prove you're in pain. There's a different kind of presence, a different kind of strength that radiates from someone who holds their emotions in check, not because they're numb, but because they are deliberate. That person is not easily swayed, not easily provoked, not easily broken. That person becomes a fortress, not because they are impenetrable, but because they don't open their gates without reason. Silence allows for mystery, and mystery is one of the greatest forms of control. When others can't predict your next move, they can't prepare for it. When they don't know your internal state, they can't exploit it. When they can't define you, they can't diminish you. Too many people rush to explain themselves, to justify their decisions, to share their emotional process as a way to seek understanding. But understanding is not owed. Clarity is not always beneficial. Sometimes the greatest leverage you have is the fact that no one knows where you stand, and more importantly, no one knows when you'll act. Power lies in restraint, in the moments when you feel the impulse to react, to speak, to correct, to complain, and you don't. You sit with it, you hold it, you study it, and when you do respond, it's measured, intentional, sharp. That's the kind of impact that lingers. That's the kind of communication that lands. Not the loudest voice, but the calmest one. Not the person who speaks first, but the one who waits, listens, and chooses their words with precision. When you're unpredictable, people watch their words around you. They second guess their assumptions. They don't know what version of you they're going to get, because you don't broadcast every change, every emotion, every internal shift. You move silently, you evolve silently, and by the time people see the new version of you, it's already solid. You're already ahead, and they're left behind, still trying to decode the version they thought they knew. Silence is strategic. It gives you space to think, to reflect, to adjust. When you're constantly talking, reacting, explaining, you're not thinking. You're performing. You're giving pieces of yourself to others before you even know what they mean. You're revealing thoughts that haven't fully formed. But when you stay silent, you give your thoughts time to mature. You allow your instincts to sharpen. You make decisions from clarity, not chaos. The predictable person is always easier to manipulate. If someone knows how you respond to anger, they'll provoke you. If they know how you respond to praise, they'll flatter you. If they know your emotional weaknesses, they'll push those buttons. But if you're quiet, if you maintain your composure, those buttons don't work. You stop being a puppet. You start being the one who holds the strings. Some people equate silence with weakness. They think if you're not speaking, you must be scared, passive, lost, but that's projection. They assume that because they fear silence, you must too. What they don't realize is that silence is often the mark of someone who is not emotionally reactive. Someone who doesn't feel the need to defend, prove, or impress. Someone who knows who they are and doesn't need to constantly explain it. In silence, you develop your internal voice. You tune out the noise of the world and tune into your own rhythm. You stop reacting to what's happening around you and start responding to what's happening within you. And that's where real growth happens, not in the conversations, but in the quiet hours. In the moments when no one is watching and you're choosing deliberately what to carry forward and what to leave behind. There's power in being the person people can't read, the one who smiles but doesn't reveal everything, the one who listens more than they speak, the one who moves through rooms without announcing their presence. That person controls the energy. That person shifts dynamics without saying a word. Because silence isn't the absence of communication. It's a different language. A deeper one that doesn't rely on volume but on vibration. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer. When someone disrespects you and you don't retaliate. When someone expects a reaction and you give them stillness. When chaos surrounds you and you remain grounded. That silence speaks volumes. It says, I don't need to engage with this. I don't need to prove anything here. I'm not affected by your attempt to pull me down. That kind of presence unnerves people because they realize they have no power over you. When you're silent, you hear more, you see more, you pick up on subtleties others miss. You notice shifts in tone, changes in body language, contradictions in stories. Your awareness sharpens, your perception deepens, and because you're not constantly filling the space with your own voice, you start to notice who's truly authentic and who's not. You begin to sense intention. You begin to separate truth from performance. The person who always speaks reveals everything, their fears, their desires, their priorities, and while openness can be good in the right context, excessive transparency is a vulnerability. It gives too much away. It turns your inner world into public property, but the person who holds back, who doesn't reveal every plan, every goal, every struggle, they move in a way that commands respect. They're not easily categorized, they're not easily dismissed. They become a presence you have to earn access to. You don't need to be mysterious for the sake of ego. You need to be unpredictable because predictability invites control. And in a world where people are always trying to influence you, sell to you, manipulate your emotions, or steer your choices, unpredictability is self-preservation. It is how you protect your boundaries, your focus, your purpose. People respect what they can't easily understand. They lean in when you don't say too much. They value what they have to earn. And when you are silent, you force people to engage with you more carefully. You make them question their assumptions. You make them work to get to know you. And that work builds respect. Because people never value what is handed to them too easily. They value what is revealed slowly, selectively, intentionally. There's a deep satisfaction in being the person who doesn't overshare, who knows when to speak and when to hold back, who can be surrounded by noise and still remain unaffected. That kind of self-discipline is rare. It's a signal of someone who's not seeking approval or validation, someone who's building something real in private with patience and intention. When you are silent, you conserve energy. You're not spending it defending yourself, explaining your every move, or managing how others perceive you. You save that energy for what matters, for your goals, your growth, your peace. And that conserved energy becomes momentum. It becomes fuel. It becomes the force that drives you forward while others are busy broadcasting and reacting. Your silence creates a void, and people hate voids. They rush to fill them with guesses, with assumptions, with narratives of their own. Let them. Because while they're busy speculating, you're busy executing. While they're trying to figure you out, you're leveling up. And by the time they realize what's happening, it's too late. You're already ahead. Not because you talked about it, but because you stayed silent and moved. The most powerful people in the room are rarely the loudest. They're the ones who speak last, the ones who wait, who watch, who choose their words with weight. Their silence gives their voice value. Their restraint gives their opinions impact. They're not rushing to fill the space. They know their presence is enough. And when they do speak, people listen, not out of politeness, but out of respect. Silence isn't passive. It's not about hiding or shrinking. It's about being intentional. It's about protecting what's sacred, guarding what's in progress, and choosing not to be defined by every thought that passes through your mind. It's about knowing that not everything needs to be said, and that sometimes the most powerful move is to say nothing at all. Pain is a personal experience, and healing is a personal journey. When you try to make others understand your pain, you are often trying to hand them something they were never meant to carry. No matter how vividly you describe it, no matter how many tears you shed while explaining, they will never fully feel what you feel. They might sympathize, they might even relate in fragments, but your pain belongs to you alone. And the deeper the pain, the more isolated the path of healing becomes. Every individual has a unique way of experiencing hurt. The way it roots itself in your memory, how it twists around your sense of identity, how it changes the way you look at the world, it's personal. You can describe the events, list the symptoms, explain the timeline, but what lives inside you, the weight, the confusion, the numbness, the rage cannot be downloaded into someone else's understanding. It's not their fault. It's just not possible. They don't have your lens. They don't carry your history, your wiring, your values, or the 1,000 small memories that made you feel the way you did. Even those who try to understand will fall short, not because they're cold, but because empathy has limits. When you open up to people expecting that they'll truly get it, you often end up disappointed. They offer advice that feels hollow. They compare your situation to their own. They minimize your emotions because, to them, it seems fixable, simple, manageable. They use phrases like "just move on." It could be worse. Everything happens for a reason. And you nod because what else can you do? You realize they're not capable of meeting you where you are. And that realization stings, because now not only are you carrying your pain, you're also dealing with the disappointment of being misunderstood. And that's why it's dangerous to put your healing in someone else's hands. When you expect someone to say the right words, to give you the perfect reassurance, to guide you out of your suffering, you set yourself up to rely on something that is not sustainable. Healing cannot be outsourced. It cannot be downloaded through conversation. It has to be done in the quiet, in the stillness, in the moments when no one is watching, and you are forced to confront your own demons head on. When you stop expecting others to understand your pain, something shifts. You stop explaining. You stop justifying. You stop needing your experience to be validated in order to feel real. You realize your pain is valid simply because you felt it. You stop being trapped in the loop of oversharing, of venting to people who don't know what to do with your emotions, of trying to make someone else care as much as you do. And in that space, you reclaim your agency. You begin to sit with your pain without rushing to translate it for others. You begin to observe it, to learn from it, to allow it to reveal what it came to teach you. Pain is a kind of language that only you can fully interpret. And the more you try to make others fluent in it, the more frustrated you become. Not because they're cruel, but because you're trying to teach them something that wasn't designed for their comprehension. It's like describing a color to someone who's never seen it. You can come close, but you'll never succeed entirely, and that's okay, because the goal of healing is not to be understood, it's to be whole. Some people will genuinely care. They'll try. They'll listen. They'll hold space. They'll say, "I'm here for you." And those people are valuable, but even their presence cannot substitute for the inner work that only you can do. Because at 2 a.m., when the weight comes back, when the old memory resurfaces, when the feeling you thought you buried rises again, it's your own voice that has to be the one to calm you down, not theirs. You have to be your own anchor, your own support, your own guide through the dark. There's a strength that comes when you stop needing someone to walk with you. You realize your legs are still working. You realize that while companionship is comforting, it is not essential. You begin to take responsibility, not blame, but responsibility for your own healing. That means choosing not to live in the identity of the wounded. That means refusing to let your trauma define every conversation, every relationship, every self-perception. It means facing your pain head on and asking, "What now?" rather than "Why me?" When you try to get others to understand your pain, you're also keeping it alive. You're rehearsing it. You're restating the story over and over, hoping for a different outcome, for someone to finally say the magic words that make it all go away. But pain doesn't dissolve through repetition. It dissolves through transformation, through integration, through deciding that you will no longer let this pain be the main character in your story. There's a point where healing stops being about understanding and starts being about action. Where it stops being about explanation and starts being about evolution. You stop retelling the past and start rebuilding the future. That doesn't mean you forget. It means you carry it differently. It becomes a scar, not an open wound. A memory, not a sentence. And the only way to reach that point is by going inward, not outward. By listening to your own intuition instead of relying on other people's interpretations. The more you stop expecting others to understand, the more compassionate you actually become. You realize everyone's fighting something invisible. You stop needing perfect responses from imperfect people. You stop blaming others for their inability to support you. You accept them as they are, and you accept yourself as you are, and in that acceptance, you find peace. You free others from the burden of having to fix you, and you free yourself from the disappointment of expecting them to. There is a kind of dignity in silence, not the silence of repression, but the silence of ownership. When you can carry your pain with grace, when you can process it without turning it into a spectacle, when you can grow from it without using it as currency for sympathy, that's strength. That's maturity. That's resilience. You're no longer bleeding in front of everyone hoping they'll hand you a bandage. You're stitching yourself up, quietly, patiently, and when people see you, they don't see a victim, they see a survivor. Healing is not linear. Some days you'll feel fine. Other days, something small will trigger everything. That's part of the process. But the difference is that when you've accepted the solitude of your healing, you no longer panic when the pain comes back. You know how to sit with it. You know how to breathe through it. You stop running to people looking for relief. You become your own medicine. When others can't understand your pain, it doesn't make it less real. When they offer weak advice, when they change the subject, when they grow silent because they don't know what to say, that's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their limits, and you must stop making their inability your injury. You must stop confusing misunderstanding for invalidation. They are simply unable, not unwilling, and once you accept that, you stop begging to be heard. You start listening to yourself instead. Some people will understand fragments of your journey. They'll say things that resonate. They'll offer comfort that lands. but they will never hold the full picture, because only you know what it felt like to live through it. Only you know what it cost, and only you can determine what comes next. When you stop expecting others to understand your pain, you start building inner power. You stop externalizing your emotional life. You stop being dependent on validation. And you start growing a kind of strength that no one can take from you, because it's forged in solitude, in silence, in the unlit corners of your own heart. You start making decisions not from the need to be understood, but from the desire to be whole. There's a freedom in that, a peace. You stop carrying the double burden of suffering and explaining. You let go of the exhausting effort to narrate your pain to others, and you turn that energy inward. Into healing, into creativity, into growth. You stop leaking your emotional energy trying to be understood, and you start reclaiming it, using it to rebuild yourself from the inside out. And the more you do that, the less you need. You don't need everyone to get it. You don't need applause. You don't need to be the topic of anyone's empathy. You don't need to be seen as strong or weak or brave or broken. You just need to be you. Whole, quietly healing, quietly rising, quietly becoming everything you were always meant to be, not because someone understood your pain, but because you did, and that was enough.